Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome into another episode of the podcast, listeners. I'm excited to be here with you again for another episode. And oh my goodness, such great stuff that we have to talk about today. But if my calculations are correct, this episode is coming out the day before Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to anybody who is listening to this around the time of its release. And I thought, what better topic for a Thanksgiving podcast episode than gratitude? I feel like it's such a hot button, buzzwordy thing that gets bantered about when it comes to parenting. One of my favorite things to hear parents say, and when I say favorite, I mean because it gives me a chance to really stretch my eyeball muscles when I'm rolling my eyes. I'm just teasing, but one of my favorite things listening to parents, which I hear a lot, is how ungrateful their kids are, or interpreting their behavior as ungrateful, or if they were really grateful, they would behave this way or that way, right? So, gratitude, I think, is a prominent in value that parents are hoping to experience from their kids, no matter what the time of year. But Thanksgiving is definitely one of those times. And I don't think that we're a very unique family when it comes to Thanksgiving in our house. That we have this tradition that before we start eating, we go around the table and just say something that we're feeling grateful for. And it's probably like the only time in our whole year where we do something like that. Sometimes when we're all just sitting together as a family, we'll just kind of my oldest son calls it doing gratefuls, where we just kind of go around and say something you're grateful for. But Thanksgiving seems like more like a time where you kind of get on your soapbox and talk about just how lucky and fortunate you are in your life and everything. And I also try not to let it go by the wayside that Thanksgiving is a pretty wackadoodle holiday in America that brushes a lot of really problematic truths about our history under the rug. And at least, thank goodness, we're not doing what we did when I was a kid, which was acting out these ridiculous pantomimes of, you know, beautiful, happy vibes between Native Americans and colonial settlers and things like that. Thank goodness we're not doing that anymore. But also, here we are. We still have this holiday. So in our family, anyways, it's a day where we acknowledge that backstory. But for our family, it's really just a moment of being together with family and feeling fortunate and grateful and expressing that to each other and all of those things. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about gratitude. And I will, I already gave you a little bit of a mini confession when I was like, I guess I do kind of roll my eyes when people start talking about their kids being ungrateful. That's just really not, it's something that I've worked on in myself over the 20 years that I've been a mom to not interpret my kids' behavior to mean anything super specific about them in general, and especially that ungrateful piece. That I do not want you to get the impression that I never feel that way towards my children. I definitely do, especially when you like get them something lovely and then they're like, well, how can I have this other thing? It's like, are you kidding me? I've definitely gone through those moments with my kids, but in general, feeling that the people around me are ungrateful isn't a specific struggle of mine. And I think that makes it easier for me to be maybe just a little flippant about it. And that's, yeah, that is a confession for me because it's not very kind and certainly not the energy that I want to be bringing to my coaching practice and things like that. So, it's like when you're not in that struggle, it's easy to be dismissive of it. And then when you're in it, you're like, this is the most important thing because it's the most important thing for me. So I get why it's the most important thing for you. But that feeling of being unappreciated is real. And I don't necessarily know that I've gone through periods as a mom of feeling that my kids were so ungrateful. I definitely have gone through periods in my motherhood where I felt unappreciated and unrecognized, and invisible is a word that I've used a lot to describe my feelings in parenthood. But one of the things that a lot of parents focus on around Thanksgiving is helping their kids to be grateful, and not even necessarily grateful toward us, right? Like, I don't necessarily need a big speech about how amazing I am, but just helping kids see that, you know, they have a lot of beautiful bounty in their lives. And so, well, let's talk about that a little bit. So, I think there's a lot of, maybe, in my opinion, hokey ways that we try to sort of force gratitude in ourselves as well as in our kids, right? Like a gratitude journal is an example of that. Now, sometimes that can be really helpful. I do have clients who use gratitude journals, and it's not hokey and it's not forcing anything. It's just a really beautiful part of their practice every day, and it means a lot to them. And if that's you, I wish you tons of love and luck. And I think that's fabulous. I think there's a lot of us who try to force ourselves to be grateful by disallowing our negative emotions and almost like scolding ourselves into a better attitude. And in my experience, that doesn't really work very well. And what tends to come from that, at least in my experience working with adults who have tried this approach, is shame. I can't tell you how many times I hear from parents like, I don't really have anything to complain about. I have a roof over my head. My partner is X, Y, and Z. My kids are healthy. Like, I should be happy. Well, yeah, but here we are in a coaching session, so you ain't. And trying to tell yourself that you should be isn't working, because if it was, you wouldn't have set this session up for yourself, right? The truth is, well, first of all, that we need to engage with the truth and not a fantasy. So whether you should be grateful or you shouldn't complain is kind of irrelevant, because you aren't grateful and you are complaining. And if that's just true, that's not a judgment thing. It's not wrong or right or good or bad. It just is. That's how you're feeling right now. So let's be honest about it. But that's kind of tricky, right? When we're trying to create a different sense of emotions and a different reality going forward. And even more so when we're trying to help cultivate those sensations in our children. So, if you are not feeling grateful this year, good for you. Go keep not feeling grateful. That's how you feel, and that's the reality. And the quickest way, which still might not be quick, to feeling maybe some of that gratitude you wish you felt is to acknowledge that you're not feeling it right now and engage with that. So, put that out there as well. But what does work to cultivate true gratitude for ourselves and in our children? And I kind of break this down into three specific, kind of philosophies, let's say. The first is, I call it fostering versus forcing. So whenever we're working on like ethics or like life lessons or emotions with kids, it's so much more effective to go for that sort of cultivating, fostering perspective versus that forcing, just like I was saying before. Because the truth is that we really can't force anyone to feel anything, including ourselves. So if you can get to a place where you're supporting yourself and your child in, maybe, yes, learning the outward actions of gratitude, maybe a thank you note or just saying thank you when something happens, but also that inner process of a lived experience of gratitude, that's when things are going to start to shift. So, once again, this isn't like just pretend you're grateful when you're not, but you definitely can demonstrate gratitude to your children just by verbally saying, when it's true, oh my gosh, I am so grateful. So I kind of want to give an example. Like, I came home from running this retreat. I was gone for several weeks. I came home and I had a lot of food in the freezer. And I literally opened the freezer door and I was like, oh my gosh, I am so grateful to my past self that I went grocery shopping and had the foresight to put all this stuff away and save it, because I'm so grateful that I don't have to go to the grocery store right now. It doesn't have to be anything complicated like that, but just to say it out loud. Whenever you are feeling those feelings that you hope to cultivate more of in yourself and in your children, demonstrate them And when they're not there, don't pretend. But if they are there, that's wonderful. And have um, that outward display. The other thing that I think feeds into this whole idea of fostering gratitude is to address those things that get in the way. So you've heard me talk ad nauseum at this point about internal family systems. Well, one of the beautiful things I think exists within IFS is this fundamental philosophy that we all have a self, and it's kind of like the sun. It's shining, it's inside of us, it's there all the time. But the parts of us that get activated or need to be strategizing or whatever, they're like clouds, and they get activated and they sort of come in and block the rays of the sun, right? Gratitude is an emotion that I sense a lot when I do IFS work with people, because as the parts, these clouds that are blocking the sun, engage with the client, when the client starts to create a self two-part relationship, one of the things we often learn from our parts, especially our protector parts, is that they're working really, really hard to keep us safe, and they feel really unappreciated and unrecognized. And when we've cultivated a good self to part relationship, what naturally emerges is this sense of appreciation and recognition from the client's self toward the client's parts. And what I love about that, and why I'm bringing it forward right now, is I want to just offer you that thought that gratitude is a state of being that might be your just natural state, a state of recognition and appreciation, um and sort of like reveling in the bounty and beauty that's all around us in this world. In my opinion, that's a natural state for an unperturbed system to be in. So if you're not feeling that gratitude, some of that fostering stuff might be, let's engage with the stuff you are feeling, give it what it needs, because as that stuff sort of gets what it needs and recedes, what's left is gratitude, among other things too, right? Compassion and curiosity and a sense of calmness and connectedness. All of those things are what emerge when those tumultuous aspects of our system are getting what they need. So if you're not feeling grateful this year, first of all, there's no sense shaming yourself about it. That's just true. Let's engage with what you actually are feeling and give it what it needs, and see what sort of emerges as that happens. And it's the same thing for our kids. So can we cultivate this sense of gratitude in our children by addressing the non-gratitude stuff that they're expressing? So I'm thinking right now of a very specific situation that happened, gosh, maybe like a year or two ago, between my daughter and me, where she was just in a really funky place. And she and I went out and we got pedicures and everything, and she didn't say thank you the entire time we were there. She talked about herself the entire time we were there. She, complained. It was all negative. Everything she was saying was totally negative, complaining about so and so at school or somebody else, like one of her brothers or whatever it was. She was just like super negative. And we get in the car and she didn't even say thank you, but she immediately was like, we should go and get boba. And I was like, no, I don't want to go get boba with you right now. I just said, no, I'm not really up for that. I didn't get into the whole, you didn't say thank you, you're really annoying. I didn't say any of that stuff. But, we kind of sat in silence after that. I was just like, yeah, no, I don't really feel it. I don't really want to go get boba right now. And she sat for a while, and then she actually started to open up and, kind of told me, there's a bunch of other stuff on her mind, like all the stuff she had been complaining about in the nail salon, and all of those, were coming from a deeper place, which she shared later, that where she was just kind of feeling a little bit insecure and unhappy at school. Okay, well, let's have a conversation about that. And then by the end of our conversation, and we had gotten back home, she did say, thanks for taking me out to get my nails done. And I was like, thank you for saying thank you. That means a lot to me. But me just guilting her about, like, I just did this nice thing for you and you didn't have the decency to thank me. That's kind of besides the point. Like, I do believe that it's true for, I know it's true for me, but I think that it's true for almost everybody that if someone's not saying thank you, like if they're not really feeling gratitude, it's because something else, they're feeling something else. And can we engage with that and not get so fixated on like, you are behaving in a really crappy way right now, and I want to change that? Can we trust that if we engage with what is present in our kids right now, the quote unquote way we want them to behave will naturally occur? I wonder how that lands with you. If you were my client sitting here behind me, that's what I'd be saying right now. What are your thoughts on that? So that's that fostering versus forcing idea about gratitude. The other thing, and I think this is huge for parenting, is separating morality from behavior. Saying please, saying thank you, being generous and giving a birthday present at a birthday party. These are manners. They're not actually values or emotions. They're behaviors, right? And they're important. They're important behaviors to expect from our children, to model for our children, and to set boundaries around. We don't need to give them a lecture about morality. If you don't say please or you don't say thank you, is it possible for you to look at a kiddo who's not saying thank you and not see that as a reflection on their character, but just as a misbehavior? It's just a simple choice that they made to not say thank you. So we can expect those um, morality things to emerge over time and according to each person's personality and value system. It's actually not necessarily something that we can force, like I said in our last point, right? But you also have the right to expect manners, and we can expect them by establishing rules and enforcing them, right? We can say, I don't do things like, for example, let's say next week my daughter wanted to go get her nails done again. I could easily say, last time I took you, you didn't really even say thank you. So no, I don't really like doing things like that for people who don't have good manners. Please is like the easiest one, right? Especially when our kids are super young, because they just want something and you just hold it and say, oh, I'm happy to give this to someone who uses their manners. Or what does it sound like for you to ask for that using your manners? My kids used to hear me say using your manners a lot when they were little. Right. So those are some just rules and boundaries that we use around behavior. If you make it mean something about their morality, you are going to have a very, very hard time teaching manners. It's often the kids whose parents are very dysregulated around their manners because they're making it mean something very extreme about their character of their child. Those kids actually tend to have worse manners because all of their interactions about manners have been these like supercharged, shamey, punitive, upset interactions. And, it really doesn't have to be that way. It's just like you either say please or you don't. And here's what happens if you do. And here's what happens if you don't. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you don't have any morals. It just means that you didn't do this thing that is the way that our family works. That's all. So you also can model those manners, right? By being generous yourself, by saying please and thank you a lot, especially to kids. It's very, very validating and respectful to say please and thank you to our children. And there are so many parents who do not do that. So, at the bottom line is that when we think our kids' failure to say thank you reflects a moral shortcoming, we tend to overreact or get down on ourselves. And that just really sabotages our parenting. So separate morality from behavior. And then the last piece kind of circles right back to that fostering versus forcing. And that is to get curious. So if you or your kid aren't feeling or showing gratitude, there's something going on, right? We jump to the entitlement conclusion when kids aren't grateful, but that might not be it at all. We become so judgmental on our kids, most likely because we're being judgmental on ourselves. But we just kind of jump to that conclusion, right? But think about for yourself. Is your child really being ungrateful because they have an entitlement issue? Think about when you're not grateful. Is it because you're entitled? Or is it just because you're not feeling happy or satisfied? If we can get curious and explore and then honor what we discover when we explore, we're going to get so much closer to gratitude for ourselves personally, but also our kids. We're going to help them get closer to that sensation of gratitude. So, and like I said before, that also might mean even give yourself or your kiddo space to feel dissatisfaction instead of gratitude for the way that things are going right now. So, think about all of that beautiful stuff. And I'm wishing you a beautiful, fabulous Thanksgiving, whatever that means to you, with lots of true emotions and genuine connection, even if those emotions aren't gratitude and appreciation. And I also just want to take a minute to say how grateful I am to be doing this work, whether it's the work of recording my podcast or the work I get to do in a discovery call with you when you reach out and decide to explore coaching, or the work I get to do if you hire me and become my client, or if you're already my client out there, or the work I get to do when I run the retreat. Like all of these things are just incredibly fabulous experiences for me. And none of them would be possible without you, you listening, you participating, you engaging, you reaching out, all of those things. So I hope that everybody's having a beautiful beginning to the holiday season, and that you feel that appreciation from me today. If from nobody else, you can know in your heart of hearts, deep down, that I do truly appreciate you.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.